So today, we're going to dive into a really fascinating research paper. It tackles a massive question. Why are we so stuck when it comes to solving huge global crises like climate change, even when we have all the solutions? The paper argues that the real problem, well, it isn't out there in our policies or our technologies. It's in here. It's in the invisible wounds deep inside our societies.
I mean, this really is the central mystery, isn't it? We have brilliant climate models. We've got incredible renewable energy tech, blueprints for a circular economy. We literally know what to do. And yet, decade after decade, we just fall short. Emissions keep rising, ecosystems are collapsing, and it feels like we're locked in this weird cycle of knowing but not doing. The paper we're looking at today suggests we've been laser-focused on all the external symptoms while completely ignoring the internal source code that's running the show. The authors argue that the missing piece of this whole puzzle isn't external at all. It's internal. It's rooted in the psychological and emotional foundations of our entire modern society. Something deep inside our collective human operating system is basically preventing the upgrade we so desperately need.
You see, most of our strategies, things like carbon taxes or efficiency standards, they assume that we're all rational actors, that we'll just make logical choices when we're given the right data. But this research points out that's just not how people work. Our decisions are fundamentally shaped by stress, emotion, and deep-seated trauma. We're trying to run this new, sustainable software on old, outdated, and frankly pretty glitchy hardware. And that hardware, it's our collective psyche, and it's been shaped by generations of stress.
So what is this glitchy hardware, really? Well, the paper proposes this really radical idea that our societies are actually built on a kind of invisible infrastructure, one that conditions everything we do, from how we design our economic policies to how we treat each other and the planet. And this slide just perfectly illustrates the core concept, trauma as infrastructure. We usually think of trauma as a deeply personal wound, something that happens to an individual. But this paper reframes it as a systemic, structural force. It's the accumulated wear and tear from things like chronic stress, economic insecurity, and historical injustices that gets baked right into the blueprints of our institutions. The key takeaway here is that it's not a bug in the system. It has become the operating system itself.
And what's wild is that this trauma creates this dangerous, self-perpetuating feedback loop. Let's walk through it. Step 1, you have these extractive systems that create constant stress and insecurity for people. Step 2, all that stress becomes collective trauma, which dysregulates our nervous systems on a mass scale. Step 3, leaders, coming from that same state, design institutions that reflect their own inner landscape of scarcity and control. And then finally, those very institutions just generate more stress for everyone, and the cycle starts all over again.
So the result of this loop is this state of collective nervous system dysregulation. Just think about our modern world for a second. The 24/7 news cycle that's designed to fuel outrage, social media algorithms that feed on our anxiety, the constant pressure of digital capitalism. These things aren't just distracting, they are biologically hijacking us. They're keeping our collective nervous system in a constant low-grade state of fight or flight. We are essentially a society on high alert. And what happens when we're constantly on high alert? Well, our perception of the world starts to narrow. We get obsessed with threats, with what we lack, and we fall right into what the paper calls the scarcity trap. Now, the crucial point here is that a scarcity mindset isn't just about a real lack of resources. It's a mental state that fundamentally changes how our brains work. It creates this tunnel vision, forcing us to prioritize immediate needs over any long-term goals. It makes it nearly impossible to do the kind of generational planning that sustainability requires. I mean, how can we possibly plan for the year 2050 when our brain is screaming about just surviving today? And this is a really critical distinction to make. Absolute scarcity. That is a brutal, life-threatening reality for billions of people. But for many of us, the dominant force is actually manufactured scarcity. This is the psychological anxiety that's engineered by our economic system. That fear of missing out, the pressure to accumulate more stuff, the worry of losing our social status. It's a system designed to make sure we never, ever feel like we have enough, even when we live in a world of relative abundance.
And where does all this anxiety get channeled? Well, it goes straight into our relationship with money. Money stops being just a tool for exchange, and it becomes this huge psychological symbol for safety, for security, for our self-worth. Accumulating it becomes an end in itself. It's this endless attempt to soothe the deep-seated fear and trauma that the system itself creates.
So this brings us right back to our original question. If we know the system is harmful, why on earth do we keep reproducing it?
Well, the answer seems to lie in some really powerful psychological defense mechanisms that keep us locked in place.
And one of the key mechanisms here is this idea of competing commitments. We all have them. These are the powerful unspoken promises we've made to ourselves, usually to stay safe, to belong, or to maintain our identity, that secretly work against our stated goals. Now, they're not flaws. They're actually our psyche's loyal, but often outdated, protection strategies.
This slide gives a perfect example. Someone might say, I'm totally committed to sustainability at my company. That's the stated goal. But their hidden, competing commitment is, I'm also committed to not losing my job. And the big assumption underpinning it all is, if I push too hard for real change, I'll be seen as a threat, and my career will be at risk. Now guess which commitment wins out almost every single time? Yep, the hidden one. And the ultimate consequence of all this chronic stress, this scarcity thinking, and all this internal conflict is, well, it's absolutely chilling. Imagination collapse. We become so bogged down in just managing the dysfunctional present that we lose the collective ability to even imagine a different, better future. Our vision for what's possible shrinks until only two options seem to be left on the table: some minor technical fixes or, inevitable apocalypse. Okay, so if the problem is this deep, this psychological, this systemic, then the solution has to be too. The paper's really powerful conclusion is that healing isn't a distraction from the work of sustainability, it is the work.
But we really need to redefine what we mean by healing. It's not just about individual therapy to fix a personal problem. In this context, healing is a public, collective act of capacity building. It's the hard work of restoring our society's psychological and relational infrastructure, our shared ability to self-regulate, to build trust, and maybe most importantly, to dream together again.
And just look at what this new healed operating system makes possible. It allows us to move from competition to collaboration, from short-term extraction to long-term stewardship, from seeing value only in transactions to seeing it in relationships. And crucially, it helps us shift from a constant state of anxiety about accumulating more to a grounded sense of enoughness. This quote just perfectly captures the paper's core message. We cannot build a healthy, sustainable world on a foundation of collective trauma and dysregulation. The work of repairing our inner worlds is what creates the capacity to repair our outer world. It's not some side project, it's the essential groundwork. So that leaves us with a really profound and practical question. If healing our trauma, our nervous systems, and our relationship with scarcity is the necessary first step, how do we actually do it? What are the tools and practices we can use to begin this vital work? Now, this paper is part of a series that explores this, but for now, it's the fundamental question we have to start asking, in our communities, in our organizations, and in ourselves.